Hello my friends and welcome to a video that you're gonna get mad about, so quick, let's do a distraction. Well, that was unnecessary, but look, I get it. We are about to go through 10 matches from 2022 and dub them the best of the year so far. And if your favorite isn't in there, you're gonna be upset. But that's why you go down to the comments, that's why you call me a bald a-hole, and that's why I distract you again. Nope, just weird, but I've done it now. Anyway. Hello, I am Simon from What Culture, and indeed, here are the 10 best matches of 2022 so far. Let's be honest, it's impossible to get them all in anyway. There has been some bangers. Number 10, Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 38. I mean, this was awesome within 30 seconds. Playing with their controversial finish from SummerSlam 2021, Becky Lynch went straight for the manhandle slam, Bianca Belair got out of it and went for the KOD, and that's when Big Time Bex manipulated Bianca's hair to get this crazy near fall. And from that moment I knew it, this is gonna be a classic. Lynch was so good throughout all of this too, she really felt like an obstacle that Bianca Belair had to beat, and the fact that towards the end of the whole thing, Lynch was like, I can't beat her, and showed this all over her face, well, it made the eventual victory all the more sweet. This is how it evolved throughout as well, and we kind of told this story here, that Becky Lynch was fast out of the gates, but as the match went longer and longer, it was Bianca that had the upper hand. And seriously, if you haven't watched this, you should. And if you came into my house right now and said, Simon, I think this is one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, I certainly wouldn't argue with you. That's how much I enjoyed it. Number 9, Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy at AEW New Japan Forbidden Door. Right, seriously, I love this match. Because my life is already so crazy with wrestling, I struggle to be able to rewatch contests, but I thought this was so good, I made a point of doing it, and it was even better in round 2. And a huge reason for this may be the fact that this is one of the biggest platforms that Will Ospreay has ever been able to showcase his talents, and he absolutely smashed it. But on the other side, you have Orange Cassidy, who has proven himself time and time again, and yet still gets naysayers going, he's just a gimmick, even though he's proven he's taken his character and work rate and squeezed it all together. So it really was two people with a point to prove, and they absolutely smashed it. And while this is good throughout, the last 5 minutes are superb. I mean, they just hit the go button, and what the flub don't they do? You also have this idea that Cassidy is actually using his weak offense and his stupid kicks and his stupid punches to try and wind up Will Ospreay, and this is why when he's hitting him with the bigger maneuvers towards the end of the thing, and Ospreay is selling it like a king, I tell you, if you don't like this match, that's fine, that's your prerogative, but as you can probably tell, I think it rocks. The facial expressions are so on point too, and Will Ospreay was able to get away with the and not look like an absolute goober. So this was just such a coming out party, given the general consensus is still, oh man, I don't like these guys. Honestly, you could have put this at number 1 and I wouldn't have moaned. Number 8, John Moxley versus Busick from GCW Bloodsport. So I want to try and include as many promotions as I can in this list because that makes it more fun. And if you enjoy professional wrestling where it looks like two dudes are trying to kill each other, this is a match for you. For one, Busick is just superb at bringing this odd reality into proceedings, and we've seen what John Moxley can do. And all you really need to observe is look at these images on the screen right now. Does that look like a pleasant situation? No, it doesn't. And there's also so much blood throughout all this, you'll actually start feeling scared in your tum-tum. But that's the design of this whole thing. Both guys clearly sat down and thought, well, how can we really get some feelings out of people? And they achieved it. They also take advantage of a bunch of cool spots that you can only do in this environment because it don't have any ropes. And if you've still got a wrestling non-fan who's like, oh man, wrestling is so fake, show them this, and they will change their tune. So for sheer effort alone, it deserves a shout out. With a bit of hyperbole, I bet they were never the same again. Number 7, Hangman Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson on the 5th of January, AEW Dynamite. A big reason for this one is because it was on free TV. That's right. We just got to a Wednesday, and there was a world title match looking at you saying, please come in to my loving embrace. Their first match at Winter is Coming was also a banger, so the fact here we built on that in order to have a rematch, which benefited if you knew where they'd come from. Well, just bravo. The coolest part is that both guys decided to ignore their previous strategies because they didn't work. So Bryan comes flying out of the gates and tries to kill this man, whereas the cowboy is like, you know what, I'm going to be resilient and I'm going to keep getting up. I mean, even though there is blood running down his face, he has already decided my options here are to win or die. And when he kicks out of Danielson's running knee, I tell you, I had kittens. I didn't believe it was going to happen. The real highlight with this, though, is that even though Hangman Adam Page hadn't been champion for that long, They made you believe that the American Dragon could win. So in the last few minutes of this, you are reacting to every near fall and you're just buying in. I mean, this is two tremendous professional wrestlers that deserve as much praise as possible. I mean, seriously, I bet they could do this 100 times and every single one would just get better and better and better. Top guy stuff. Number 6, FTR versus the Young Bucks at the 6th of April, AEW Dynamite. And talking about top guys, we can basically repeat what we just said for this, because it's just one of those matches you can do over and over, and somehow it improves every time. And my favourite part about all of it was that Cash and Dax had learned from their first encounter when they had screwed up, because of course their whole shtick is we don't do flips and we don't do tricks, and then they screwed up by trying to do something off the top rope, and they allowed the Bucks to beat them. They were never going to make that error again, so not only do they counter the Meltzer driver in the last few seconds of this, but they then hit their own super kick party to be like, see, we can do what you're doing as well, but without the risk, and they finish it off with the big rig to not only beat the Jacksons, but to put it one-on-one. And as I'm saying these words, we're teasing around 3, and I am pumped. The final part to all of it is that before all of this, both teams were going, we're the best in the world, we're the best in the world, but that doesn't always equal great chemistry when you got in the ring. But as we found out here, whatever they had done prior was not a fluke. This is brilliant, brilliant tag team wrestling. If nothing else, it's the way that they blend the old school and the new school together, which goes to show it doesn't matter what you do in professional wrestling, as long as it works. Number 5, Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins at WWE Hell in a Cell. Now, taking the whole should it have even happened in the first place out of it, my word, this damn thing is a masterpiece. And sure, a big reason for all that is because Cody Rhodes had one of the worst pec tear bruises you're ever going to see in your life. But this is the same as those crazy people that go, this Batman game wouldn't be as good if Batman wasn't in it. Batman is in it. The whole game has been built around Batman, and that's why it's so good. The fact is, Rhodes and Seth Rollins took this injury and they crafted the whole match around it to the point I don't think I have been as emotionally invested in a match in a long ass time. Also, on a fundamental level, how did they do it? Like, how did Cody not just burst into tears halfway through? And how was Seth Rollins able to do whatever he had to do in order not to finish him off for good? I mean, they all deserve a pat on the back. It also made perfect sense that Rollins went after the pectoral muscle because nothing else would have been able to fly. But that's when the selling comes into all of this. And look, I'm sure a lot of it was real because again, Cody was hurt, but he just turned it up enough. I bled for this man. The sheer amount of heart he showed here also means when the American Nightmare comes back to television, he is going to be a super duper megastar. And it's not just because he worked through the injury, it's the way that him and Seth Rollins crafted everything around it. The Wrestling Observer gave this 5 stars, whereas we all know it should be 6.25 in the Tokyo Dome. Number 4, FTR versus the Briscoes at Supercard of Honor. So this was so good and so hard-hitting that afterwards both teams outwardly admitted, we are spent and we can barely move. So that's when you know you've given everything, and when you see it, it's ridiculous. It runs the gambit as they do everything too, and there is this one point where Dax Harwood is just punching Jay Briscoe in the corner. And I know we've been seeing that since the 80s, but he does it with so much intent and starts selling his own hand, you start to think to yourself, oh man, maybe they're stepping it up a bit. The peaks and troughs are also tremendous, and it doesn't feel worked at all. When you get towards the end and they earn every single false finish, well, just keep your eyes on every single fan in that building. They are into everyone. FTR have always said they wanted to leave their mark on the wrestling industry, and to be honest, before 2022, they'd probably already done that. But when you take this year into the equation, there ain't no two ways about it. One of the best tag teams ever. Number 3, CM Punk versus MJF at AEW Revolution. Sometimes people say you don't need story in wrestling. You're allowed to say that, you're allowed your opinions, but when you do get the narrative right, for me, you created magic. This really should be in any feud of the year list too, because the presentation here was nigh on perfect. Every detail was spot on as MJF and CM Punk went through their histories in order to craft something new. And yes, when Punk came out to his Ring of Honor theme, it was an absolutely badass moment. We are not getting into this again. The addition of the chain just reminded you that this thing had become personal, and if nothing else, who else in 2022 thought they were going to see CM Punk in a match when there was thumbtacks? It was just another war that made you feel a little bit uneasy on your feet because it was so violent. And let's not forget that Maxwell Jacob Friedman is only in his mid-20s. It's kind of terrifying to think what he's going to do in a decade's time. You also get the payoff of another long-term angle where Wardlow finally tells MJF to shove it and gives the ring to CM Punk to punch Maxwell right in the face. And honestly, the fans just scream at all of this for around about 25 minutes. I mean, it's everything right about pro wrestling, and it's so gritty to boot. I will take more of this all day long. Number 2, Anarchy in the Arena at AEW Double or Nothing. I mean, it was just too much fun. I am still in awe of how this was put together, because not only did it feature a bunch of people, but there were so many segments, meaning we had to go, well, now we're going to go over there, then we'll come back to you, then we'll fly off in this direction. But it always felt smooth. It never felt convoluted. I mean, it was just so well done. Ring announcer Justin Roberts even got us going beforehand, where he was like, well, the shit's about to hit the fan. And he was totally right, because this was violent, this was funny, this was aggressive, this was brutal. This had Eddie Kingston saying, hey man, I could probably be the new lead character in Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, when he walks out with that gas canister, I think we're going to be talking about this for years to come. I mean, I only just remember now as I'm talking to you that we also did that thing where Wild Thing played over the speakers for ages until Chris Jericho went, no, I don't want any more of this. And Jake Hagar took a horrible bump through a couple of tables. I don't think that got mentioned at all. It really was a blur by the end of it, but that just made you want to watch it again. And I'm still kind of surprised by those last few minutes and everything we did with Bryan Danielson. You can't just point out one person here, because it is the definition of a team effort, and the fact that Jericho Appreciation Society won. It's another round of applause, and I hope we do this again next year. I don't know how anyone's gonna top it. Number 1, Wheeler Yuta versus Jon Moxley at the 8th of April AEW Rampage. We've already mentioned a few matches that could have taken this spot, and other ones that weren't even in this list you could put in here too. But the reason I wanted to insert this one is because of Wheeler Yuta. Because at the start of 2022, I bet most people weren't even overly familiar with him. And then we got 4 months in, and he had an absolute barnstormer with Jon Moxley that only went on for 12 minutes, and yet somehow did everything. It also told this incredible story, because this was actually the 3rd time they'd met in AEW, and during the first encounter, I think Moxley won around about 47 seconds, and in the second encounter, it went about 7 minutes, but Mox took most of it, whereas here, every single person not only thought that Wheeler Yuta could win, but they wanted him to the point Jon Moxley started getting boos. That's when you know you've done something right. It was also far more brutal than anybody thought it was going to be, and by the time Wheels had blood pouring down his face and he just started to kick Jon right in the face, it was a bit like, I think a star is born. Like other matches we've already discussed too, it did that wonderful trick of making you think, holy crap, Wheeler Yuta is actually about to beat Jon Moxley, and while he didn't, Moxley also deserves a shout out, because much like Ospreay, he did the shocked face and got away with it. Everything here just clicked. So really this was an unexpected treat, which is why it did sneak into the top spot. I mean, it was just such a welcome surprise, and I love seeing new guys get theirs. Now, of course, we will have missed out a bunch of matches and probably need to muck around with that order a bit, so make sure you let us know in the comments below. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Go to whatculture.com, where there'll be loads of articles like this. Plus, come follow us on social media at WhatCultureWWE or at SimonMiller316. Like I say, there's other videos too. Check them. My name is Simon What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. I give you a bow. Don't know why. Goodbye.